Welcome to our first video of a series on supply and demand. And this is going to be a critical topic in understanding how basically economies work, but in particular, how the free market works. So let's get started. So when we talk about the economy, we're talking about a system in which to get things done. Think about any economy, any economic system has to answer the three questions we established in chapter 1. What to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. And every economy works a little differently than the other. But they do have a commonality to it. And the commonality is the free market. Free market. That's a particular type of economic system. And what the free market basically is a decentralized way of deciding what, how, and for whom. What do I mean by decentralized? I mean individuals in the economy decide what to produce, how to produce, and who gets it. And so, the best example would be what government agency told you to go to the particular university you're attending? And the answer would be no government agency told you where to go and get your education. You made that decision on your own. In other words, you made your own choice as to how to augment your labor with training and education. Now that's very important. How an economy educates and trains its workforce has serious economic implications. And what I've just established is individuals are deciding how to get this done. And that's an example of a decentralized way of making choices. Now, what is the benefit of having a decentralized way of making choices? Well, there's only one benefit to the free market economy, and that's efficiency. In other words, the one thing that the free market system is supposed to do better than any other economic systems is it's supposed to be more efficient with the resources, or as we put in chapter 1, factors of production. Now, think about this. This one feature of the free market system tells you a lot as to what it does well and what it doesn't do well. One of the reasons why so many people have a problem with the free market system is because it's one-dimensional. It does one thing well. Now, there are some secondary things it does in terms of innovation, but it's a one-trick pony, so to speak. And the very important thing, too, is sometimes efficiency isn't always our top priority. It's incredibly important to make any sort of economic system sustainable. You've got to be efficient with your scarce resources. But human beings are not robots, meaning we care about things other than efficiency. I like to play video games sometimes, and it's very difficult to make an argument in terms of spending time playing video games on the grounds of I'm being efficient. I'm not being efficient, but I'm enjoying myself. So there are things we care about other than efficiency. Sometimes we are willing to sacrifice efficiency to get those other things, but we can't sacrifice efficiency too much. If we do, the economic system cannot continue, it'll collapse. Now, if you are curious as to, well, okay, fine, the free market system is supposed to be efficient, how does it achieve a higher level of efficiency than other economic systems? For example, let's say extreme cases of socialism or a communism. It achieves higher levels of efficiency through what I call the 2 C's, communication and competition, the 2 C's. Now, anything that enhances communication between market participants enhances efficiency. Anything that enhances competition between producers increases efficiency. Now, this brings us to a very important point. When we talk about efficiency, you got to think of efficiency as 2 parts of one whole. One type of efficiency is called productive efficiency. The other type of efficiency is called allocative efficiency. Now, productive efficiency is what most people think about when they think about efficiency. That's maximum output, least amount of input. When you think about building a factory, and you think about, well, what sort of layout will I have of this factory? I want the workstations next to the loading dock, so there is less time transferring the raw materials to the workers. That's an example of productive efficiency. You're increasing your output by reducing the amount of inputs you put into it. Now, you have to understand that there's another type of efficiency that you have to achieve, and that's called allocative efficiency. Now, allocative efficiency is all about producing what people want. Sometimes textbooks refer to it as producing the optimal mix of output. Now think about this. You could be very productively efficient. In other words, you have a factory that maximizes output. Well, what if every unit that you produce, nobody wants? In other words, everything goes straight to inventory. Well, guess what? You've wasted all of your resources. You're not producing what people want, or in other words, you're not achieving allocative efficiency. And you need both in order to be truly efficient. Now, take a wild guess. Communication. Which type of efficiency, productive or allocative, does it enhance? Well, if you said allocative, you're right. How can you produce what people want if the market participants aren't communicating? Now, competition, this primarily affects productive efficiency. Think about this. If you have two firms competing, if one firm is slightly more productively efficient than the other, that means they have lower costs. If they have lower costs, that means they can undercut their rival in terms of price. Now, the rival has a simple choice: either get more efficient or go out of business. Do you see how competition forces firms to be productively efficient? So, this is why communication and competition are essential for the free market economy. Without it, you're not going to achieve higher levels of efficiency. Now, this chapter, when it comes to efficiency, is all about communication. In other words, supply and demand is all about, that's a D, by the way, it's all about communication. So now the question is, who's communicating, how are they communicating, and how can we demonstrate allocative efficiency using supply and demand? Well, who's communicating? Well, the market participants are communicating, and there are millions of them, and we can categorize them into four groups. And the four groups are consumers. Sometimes we call this group households. The other group are businesses. They produce goods and services. Then there's the government. The government plays a vital role and is an active participant in all economies around the world. And then there is the foreign component. In other words, any economy that's engaged in trade, it has foreign participants in their economy. So these are the groups that are communicating. Now, where are they communicating? Well, they're communicating in two markets. One market is called the Fakirs Market, and this is where you buy and sell factors of production: land, labor, machinery, minerals, raw materials. And the other market that they're participating in is in the product markets. This is where you buy and sell finished goods and services. So in other words, you have participated in the Fakirs Market. When you look for work, you're participating in the Fakirs Market because you're offering your labor for hire. And that is an example of a transaction taking place in the Fakirs Market, the buying and selling of factors of production, labor being one of them. If you ever went to McDonald's and bought a Big Mac, you were participating in the product market. You're buying a finished product, in this case, a hamburger. So we participate in both factors markets and product markets, and there is supply and demand in both markets. Now, we could see how the market participants interact in these two markets in what we call the circular flow. Circular flow has the product market and the factors market, and we see the market participants, firms are over here, consumers are over here. Now we could place the government and the foreign players here. Now you could see that businesses, think of this box as a factory. Here's a smokestack, right? Let me draw my smoke again. And it's producing goods and services, and it takes these goods and services to the product market. Now, how did they produce those goods and services? Well, they had to buy factors of production from the factors market. In this case, they bought labor, machinery, land, etc. Now, where did they get, for example, the labor? Well, consumers offered their labor for hire. And of course, the goods and services that the firms produced were purchased by consumers. Now, what you don't see moving in the opposite direction is money. For example, when the firms buy and sell their factors of production here, they get in return money. Now, when the firms sold those goods and services, well, how did they attract employees to come to their factory to work? Well, they had to offer them money. Now, when the employees went to the labor market and were hired, they were paid, you guessed it, in money. And then they took that money and they brought it to the factors market, the product market, to buy goods and services. Now look at the outer circle. The outer circle flows in this direction. And what's flowing? Either goods and services or factors of production. And let me erase this. And the inner circle is flowing in this direction. Now, what is this? What's flowing here is money. And so basically this is how the market participants interact. And I'm telling you this, there's supply and demand here, and there's supply and demand here. The question is, in the product market, for example, who's the supplier? Well, firms are supplying goods and services. Whenever you see an arrow go into one of the markets, that symbolizes supply. They're bringing something to the market. When you see an arrow leaving a market, that symbolizes demand. They're taking something from the market. And so consumers are demanders in the product market. Now, what about the factors market? Let me clean this up here so it looks a little messy, less messy. Well, what about the factors market? Well, you can see here, this line is going to the market, right? So this means they're a supplier. They're supplying labor for hire. And this arrow is leaving the market. That means they're a demander. And so when we talk about supply and demand, who's a supplier and who's a demander? It depends which market we're talking about. In the product market, firms are the supplier and consumers are the demander. But in the factors market, the roles reverse. They're no longer the demander, they're the supplier of labor. They're no longer the supplier, they're the demander of labor. So supply demand works in both markets. So what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about supply and demand primarily in the product market, and that's going to be in our next video.